How dare you rise above your station? How dare you eat bread from the wheat grown by your own hands, on the land your ancestors bled for no less? Your destiny is not in the hands of Onan, but in the hands of us, your betters. We, who left you to rot. We, who left you to suffer. We, who know not how to till the land. We, who cower behind our walls and leave you to die. It is we who know better than Onan and the gods of old. Now look upon us, kneel and worship us. Let the light of empty glory satisfy your hunger. Let your children take shelter under our boot. Let them take comfort in our brutality. What? How dare you say no?
Chapter 4.
Leif swiftly raised his blade overhead, blocking the larger boy's heavy strike. The sand-covered floor of the forge slid beneath his toes as the morning sun broke over the horizon. His current sword was much lighter than the one his father, Lord Lowind, had given him to train with back on the Red Water. This allowed Leif to move more quickly, but there was a drawback. The lighter sword couldn't absorb heavy blows well, sending jarring vibrations down into his wrist and nearly knocking the weapon from his grip. Reacting quickly, he placed his right hand against the blunted edge of the sword while holding on tightly with his left, pushing to the right. His opponent had overcommitted, putting all his strength and weight into the strike, which left him off balance. Seeing an opening, Leif moved in close, pivoted his waist, and slammed his hip into the boy's side, driving his elbow into his neck. The boy grunted and crashed into the sand of the arena. "Well done, novice Leif," Sentinel Lotus said, as Leif extended his hand to help his fallen opponent to his feet. "But do you think it was wise to place your bare hand against the blade of your weapon? You could have easily lost your fingers if the edge hadn't been blunted." "Yes, sir, Sentinel Lotus." Leif stood at attention, facing the ebony-skinned man whose handsome face was marked with scars from past victories. "I knew the blunted edge posed no risk to me. However, if the blade had been sharp, as long as I didn't slide my hand against it, I would not have been cut." The slightest hint of a smile appeared on Sentinel Lotus's face as he looked at Leif with pride. "Your father has trained you well. Now return to the line." Leif couldn't help but feel humbled and awed by the praise from his seasoned instructor. He was standing in the middle of the forge, the Academy's famous training arena. Every sentinel within the Creedmoor Empire had sweated and bled into its sand-covered floor for the past 1,000 springs. Legends such as Sentinel Lars, Sentinel Monial, and Sentinel Lowind, Leif's own father, had honed their skills here and become masters not only of the sword, but also of the spear. The forge was not just a training ground for sentinels, it was their holy place. Returning his practice sword to the scabbard at his side, Leif took his place in line next to Hemlock. "You seem excited, my friend," the hulking boy said warmly as Leif faced forward, watching Gareth and another novice square off against each other. "It's good to see a smile on your face again." Leif tore his eyes away from the duel and looked up at his friend. "I am, Hemlock. I just wish Baitor and Nomorus were here with us." The past 2 days had been hard on all of them. Baitor's death had left them full of sorrow. "As do I." Hemlock let out a mournful sigh. "While I've only known Miss Mia for 6 days and you for 4, I've known the twins for 3 summers. It fills me with great loss to know I'll never hear Baitor's voice again." "Yeah," Leif said, as the painful memory of Nomorus holding Baitor in his arms weighed down on his heart. But the Dream Day enchantment quickly replaced it with the memory of the first time his father handed him a practice sword. The memory brought a smile to his face, but he couldn't stop the resentment he felt toward the enchantment. The more he tried to hold on to the sorrowful memory, the further it was pushed out of his mind. "You're trying to think about it," Hemlock observed, noticing the conflicted look on Leif's face. "Yes, but it's like trying to keep your eye on a grain of sand as someone pours more sand on top of it," Leif sighed. "Don't you think it's wrong for us not to think about what happened?" "Yes, but I don't think the enchantment was placed on us out of malice," Hemlock said, as the 2 boys lunged at one another, locking blades. "It's more of a mercy." "A mercy?" Leif asked, turning his gaze back to the fight. "How is it a mercy?" "As sentinels, we're going to lose friends along the way. Be it through changes in who we are or by death, we'll face it nonetheless. If this is the path we've chosen, it's a fate we must accept." Hemlock turned his gaze toward the front of the arena. "The enchantment only exists within the walls of the Academy, so Mr. Mouse says. When we leave here, the pain will return. It's only a port in the ever-raging storm. Everyone gasped as Gareth brought his sword downward and struck his opponent across the back of his hand, gripping the sword. The sickening crack of bone, followed by a painful scream, echoed through the forge as the boy's practice sword fell to the ground. Gareth smiled darkly as the boy dropped to his knees, clutching his broken hand. "Well done, novice Gareth," Sentinel Lotus said in a neutral tone. "But was it necessary to break your opponent's hand? Some would say that is dishonourable." "Yes, sir," Gareth replied, as a prefect helped the injured boy to his feet and out of the arena. "One should not expect honour from those who wish to kill you. Death does not spare the honourable, it spares the victor." Sentinel Lotus let out a disappointed sigh. "You have a lot of your father in you, novice Gareth. While I do not agree with his views, nor your own, I cannot dismiss them out of hand. Very little honour is found on the battlefield. Please, return to your spot in line." Turning away from Sentinel Lotus, Gareth looked toward Leif with pure malice, the dark purple bruises under his eyes emphasizing his anger. "I don't think he took your words to heart, my friend," Hemlock said as Gareth walked past them. "You'd best keep a watch on him. He seems to be the petty type. Don't expect him to meet you on fair grounds." "You're not wrong, Hemlock," Leif said as he watched Gareth step back in line. "Perhaps you should do the same." "Novice Hemlock and Novice Lemire, please take to the floor," Sentinel Lotus announced. "Onan's mercy," Leif smiled as Hemlock stepped out of line. "Thank you, my friend," Hemlock said as he removed his sword from its sheath. The practice sword looked more like a large dagger in the boy's hand. "But you need not ask Onan for his mercy upon me." Leif chuckled. "I wasn't asking him to show you mercy, it was for Lemire." "Oh," Hemlock smiled as he looked at his opponent. "He'll do just fine. It would be foolish for me to underestimate him." "Did you hear about the dead prefect?" a girl whispered from behind Leif. "What? Really?" another girl whispered as Lemire shouted and swung wildly at Hemlock. "Here on the grounds?" "No, it was out in the city," the first girl said. Leif couldn't help but turn his attention away from the duel and toward the conversation. "But still very close to the gates. That's why they're not allowing novices beyond the walls." "Who told you about it?" the other girl asked. "My older brother. No one knows for sure, but it's being whispered that it was another lordling," the first girl replied. "Some even saw the killer, dressed in red and black like a magus, but not in their usual robes." "Wow, did they see their face?" the girl asked as Hemlock let out a rolling laugh and playfully swung his sword at the frightened Lemire. "No, their face was covered, but not their eyes," the first girl answered. "They shined in the moonlight." "You mean it was a darkling, an elf?" The girl's tone was full of fear. "That is kind of scary." "Well done, novice Hemlock," Sentinel Lotus said as the line of children started laughing. "But can you please place novice Lemire back on the ground?" Leif turned his attention back to Hemlock and smiled widely at the sight. Lemire's face was one of absolute terror as the large boy from the Southern Isles held him up over his head. Hemlock's laughter matched the crowd's, causing Leif to laugh along with them. Even Sentinel Lotus let out a small chuckle. Hemlock placed Lemire back on the ground, a look of relief washing over Lemire as his feet touched the earth. "Novice Hemlock, while each of us did enjoy the spectacle, I'd like to remind you that this is a class where you've come to learn," Sentinel Lotus said. "That being said, I do fear for those you choose to fight wholeheartedly." Hemlock nodded respectfully to Sentinel Lotus. "My apologies, Sentinel Lotus. I meant no disrespect to you or your teachings. I was merely caught in the moment." "Please return to the line," Sentinel Lotus said to the two boys. Turning, Hemlock returned to the line next to Leif. "A little over the top, don't you think?" Leif asked with a smile. "Yes, but it was fun," Hemlock replied, still grinning. "When your name is called, please step forward," a prefect shouted, holding up a parchment and beginning to read from it. Each of the novices turned their attention to the older boy as he began to call out names. "Novice Gareth, Novice—" "So, my friend," Hemlock said as the prefect continued reading from his parchment. "Have you asked Miss Mia to dance yet?" Leif began to blush. No," he stammered, the thought of Mia making his heart race. "Novice Temmen," the prefect shouted. "And why not?" Hemlock chuckled as the young novices stepped forward. "Is she not lovely?" No, it's not that," Leif said. "I just don't think she likes me like that." "Novice Leif," the prefect called out Leif's name as Novice Temmen took his place in line. Hemlock whispered, "For someone who's so good at noticing the little things, you're blind to the obvious." Leif stepped out of line and took his place next to Taman, the thought of Mia's lovely green eyes dancing in his mind, causing him to blush again. Leif knew Hemlock's words were true, but he couldn't believe it. There was no way Mia felt that way about him. She was just a friend. These feelings he had for her were nothing more than, well, they couldn't be that. Finally, novice Elizabeth. There was a touch of respect in the prefect's voice as he called out the name of House Sincred's eldest daughter. Leif turned his eyes to the lean, red-headed girl as she took her place next to him. Word had spread quickly throughout the academy about how she had cut the thumb off a youngling who got too close to her sister during the attack. Each of you was chosen for your top performance during your duels, Sentinel Lotus addressed them, with top marks going to Novice Leif and Novice Elizabeth. Leif felt the same pride he had after winning his first duel. The 6 of you will face off in a 3 versus 3 challenge. Knowledge of the blade is only one facet of becoming a sentinel. You must also know how to fight alongside one another. Nodding to the prefect, Sentinel Lotus turned and stepped off the sand-covered floor of the arena, taking a seat in one of the many observer chairs. Novice Elizabeth, Novice Gareth, and Novice Leo, take your places on the right side of the arena, the prefect said, pointing to each of them. Leif watched as they lined up and began quietly talking, with Elizabeth clearly taking charge of the group. Novice Leif, Novice Taman, and Novice Vantor take to the left. Leif and his 2 teammates huddled together on the left side of the arena. You will be given a moment to discuss your strategies, then the fight will begin. Lord Lewind, Taman said, looking to Leif. Taman was blonde, with sandy brown eyes typical of many lowborn from the Golden Plains. What do you think we should do? Well, I've never had to work as a team before, Leif admitted, glancing between Taman and Vantor. I've only ever practiced dueling one-on-one with my father. You're far better with the sword than Taman and me, Vantor added. You must have a good idea of what to do. Well, it's obvious that Novice Leo is the least skilled of the 3, Leif said. His offense is slow, but his defense is impressive. He waits for his opponent to tire, then attacks. You're right, my lord, Taman agreed, glancing toward Leo. I thought his duel would go on forever, but by the end he wasn't even sweating. Gareth is the one we need to watch out for, Leif warned. He fights dirty, as I'm sure both of you know. We should try to fight him in pairs if possible. What about Lady Sincrad? Vantor asked, his tone betraying a passionate crush rather than strategic thinking. Shouldn't we go after her first? Her duel wasn't that impressive. Yeah, I'm sure she only gets high marks because of her house, Taman added. It was true that Elizabeth had only used the most basic techniques during her initial duel, but she had executed them nearly to perfection. Unlike Leif, who had shown off a bit by grabbing the edge of his sword during his duel, Elizabeth had relied on simpler but equally effective maneuvers. Leif's father had often warned him not to over-rely on complex techniques, when simpler ones would do just as well. I don't know about that, Leif said, turning back to face Taman and Vantor. We should keep away from her as best we can until we've taken care of Gareth and Leo. The best thing for us to do is take down Gareth first, then focus on Leo, while watching out for attacks from Elizabeth. If you think that's the best course of action, my lord, Taman said, drawing his sword from its sheath, we'll follow your lead. Then it's a plan. But can the 2 of you stop calling me lord? Leif said as he and Vantor drew their own weapons. My friends call me Leif, and I only fight at my friends' sides. Sure, my lord, I mean Leif, Taman replied, a bit uncomfortable with the informality towards someone of a noble house. When the duel starts, we should rush toward Gareth and take him down, Leif said, fixing his eyes on Gareth, whose face seethed with malice as he stared back at Leif. Opponents to the ready, the prefect shouted, as the other novices in the forge grew silent with anticipation. He looked toward Leif, then toward Elizabeth, nodding to each of them before shouting, Begin! Leif, Taman and Vantor rushed toward Gareth as Leo dashed ahead of his teammate. Leif swung his sword quickly, locking blades with Gareth, while Taman and Vantor were drawn away by Leo. Looks like my lady was right, Gareth sneered at Leif as he easily pushed back against Leif's blade with brute strength. She said the 3 of you would come after me first. Good thing she knows how to deal with uppity lowborns, pretending to be nobility. I told her I'd take pleasure in putting you back where you belong. Leif quickly dropped to one knee and rolled to his left, narrowly missing Gareth's heavy backswing with his elbow. Jumping back to his feet, Leif swung his blade at the back of Gareth's knees, but missed as Gareth turned and blocked the strike. The 2 boys slowly began to circle each other, sizing one another up. The fight between Tamon, Vantor, and Leo had reached a standstill, while Elizabeth quietly stood back, her weapon not even drawn. Not so cocky now, huh, lowborn? Gareth taunted, baiting Leif into attacking. That's what I thought. You're just like your father, always using others to fight for him while he hides behind them. Anger slowly began to build in Leif as he looked toward Gareth. Are you daring to call my father a coward, Gareth? His tone was flat and calm. You heard me, lowborn, Gareth sneered, lunging toward Leif's chest. You and your father are cowards. Taking a deep breath, Leif calmed himself, then dropped down and brought the tip of his blunt blade up. Gareth let out a grunt as Leif's weapon struck the front of his protective chestplate. Gasping for breath, Gareth fell to the ground. Novice Gareth, Novice Vantor, and Novice Leo, the prefect shouted. The three of you have been eliminated. Exit the field. Leif walked over to Temmen and stood beside him. Are you okay to keep going? Leif asked, watching as Temmen panted heavily. Yes, I'll be fine. Vantor sacrificed himself so I could get an opening, Tamon gasped. I see what you mean about Leo waiting to wear us out. Leif grasped the hilt of his sword and fixed his eyes on Elizabeth. Keep your guard up and be ready to strike once she makes her move. He moved his blade into a defensive stance and slowly took a step forward. I don't think she's as dangerous as you make her out to be, Tamon said, steadying his breathing. There are two of us and she hasn't even drawn her sword. I can take her down. No, Tamon, wait, Leif shouted as Tamon charged toward Elizabeth. Tamon moved with lightning speed, faster than Leif expected. Slashing in at a right-hand arc, the air around him whistled, followed by 3 loud cracks. Leif hadn't even seen it, but it was over. Novice Tamon, you have been eliminated. Exit the field, the prefect shouted as Tamon lay on the ground, gasping in pain. Elizabeth had landed her blows on his protective chestplate, cracking it down the centre just over his heart. If she had made a fourth attack, Tamon wouldn't be lying there in pain. He'd be dead. Elizabeth's cold green eyes fixed on Leif as if he were a filthy rat that had invaded her chambers. She positioned herself in an offensive stance, pointing the tip of her blade toward him. The two stood before each other, neither daring to move. Leif began to feel lightheaded and realized he had been holding his breath. Slowly he exhaled, and that's when it happened. Elizabeth dashed forward, her blade nearly connecting with his chestplate. Leif shifted his sword to the right, then back to the left, the sound of steel on steel ringing out like a bell. Novices and prefects alike gasped at the skill and precision the two displayed. Seeing an opening, Leif brought his sword up in a narrow arc, aiming for her right side, but it was swiftly met with a block, followed by a counterstrike. Bringing his sword close to his chest, he caught the edge of her blade against his crossguard. Lay down, lowborn, Elizabeth said, her tone calm, collected and gentle, or I will end your life. Unlike Gareth, there was no bravado or taunting in her words. She stated it as a matter of fact, like warning a child about a hot flame. The scraping sound of metal echoed in Leif's ears as she drew back her blade, freeing it from the crossguard. Lady Sincred, I know not why you hate me so, Leif said, his words overflowing with passion as sweat began to form on their foreheads. But I will not stand down, nor will House Lowind cower to House Sincred. So be it, lowborn. Elizabeth drew back her sword faster this time and lunged toward him again. Leif brought his sword up and to the left, attempting to catch her blade in his crossguard. However, it was a feint. Elizabeth shifted her waist and placed her right leg behind his. A burst of white-hot pain surged through Leif's chin as the pommel of Elizabeth's sword struck him. He heaved a painful breath as his back collided with the sandy ground. Fear gripped Leif as Elizabeth screamed in rage, her eyes full of hatred. Enough, Novice Elizabeth, Sentinel Lotus shouted as she brought the tip of her blade down in 3 quick jabs, breaking through Leif's chest plate. The shift came fast, washing over the arena as Elizabeth went for the killing blow. A flash of blue light, followed by the sound of breaking glass, sent pieces of Elizabeth's blade showering across the floor. I said enough, Novice Elizabeth. The fight is over. Stand at attention. Leif slowly stood, the pain in his chin still throbbing. Elizabeth steadied her breathing, letting go of her rage and returning to her previously calm demeanour. Leif looked up at the stunned crowd. Even Hemlock's eyes showed true concern at the brutal conclusion of the duel. Sentinel Lotus lowered his outstretched hand as the blue tendrils of power slowly faded around it. Return to your positions in line, novices. Still holding the hilt of her broken sword, Elizabeth whispered to Leif as she exited the field, Next time I'll kill you, lowborn, before walking back to her place in line. Swaying, Leif made his way back to his spot beside Hemlock, who placed a steadying hand on his back. The two remained silent as Sentinel Lotus spoke. That will be enough for today. I expect to see each of you back here in the morning. Class dismissed. Are you all right, my friend? Hemlock asked, holding Leif upright. Yeah, I'm fine. That's for the most part, Leif lied, still dazed by the pain. I knew she was good with a sword, but I had no idea she was that good. Oi, I thought she was going to kill you, Hemlock said with concern. If Sentinel Lotus hadn't intervened, I fear she would have. You're not wrong, Leif said as he and Hemlock watched Elizabeth, Gareth and Leo gather in a group. His humiliation from the defeat still stung, but what overshadowed it was the fear gnawing at him. Elizabeth's cold, measured words echoed in his mind. He thought he knew what danger looked like, but this was something else. She wasn't just skilled, she was capable of killing without hesitation. The thought of her calm threat sent a chill down his spine. For the first time, he realized just how precarious his position was. This wasn't just about honor or winning a duel. His life was on the line, and it had become all too clear. We'll have to keep an eye on them, he muttered, though deep down he knew it wasn't just about watching, it was about surviving. Agreed, my friend, Hemlock said with a smile. Lady Syncred truly hates you. You must be quite the charmer to get the attention of two lovely flowers in such a way. Hey, Hemlock, Lemire shouted as he rushed toward them. Here, 2 silver hounds. Ah, thank you, my new friend, Hemlock said, grinning as he took the coins from Lemire's hand. We should do that more often. Lemire let out a mournful sigh as he watched Hemlock pocket the coins. No thanks. I'm not losing any more of my coin to you. What's that for? Leif asked, finally regaining his balance. Don't tell me you bet against me in the duel. That I did, my friend, Hemlock laughed, patting Leif on the back. What are friends for after all? Leif. Mr. Hemlock, Mia shouted as she walked onto the sand of the forge, followed by Mouse and Cat. Leif's heart started beating faster as he watched her approach. Good morning, Mia, he said, his words a bit nervous and shy. What are the two of you doing here? Oh, Mouse couldn't sleep, so... Her voice was soft like a cool breeze. So, we came to see the two of you duel. Hemlock and Mouse exchanged glances, both of them nearly laughing as Cat's tail slapped the sandy floor. It was clear that wasn't the real reason. Mia had been finding the smallest excuses to be near Leif, and it was obvious Leif was doing the same. Leif started to sway again and nearly fall as the pain from his duel reasserted itself. Reaching out, Hemlock caught Leif and steadied him. A look of concern flashed in Mai's lovely eyes as reached out with her on hand. Are you all right? She asked, as the two of them helped him to one of the benches. What happened? I'll be fine, Leif said as he collapsed onto the bench. Lady Syncred got carried away during their duel, Hemlock explained, looking to Mia. A flash of anger blazed in Mia's eyes. That bitch! Why didn't someone do something about it? Her voice was harsh and cold, sending a chill through Leif and causing Mouse to flinch. She can't just get away with that. Sorry, Lady Mia, but she can, Mouse said in a calming tone. The Syncred house is one of the High Nobility. The only thing anyone can do is try to stop her actions, but they can't reprimand her for them. Only the Emperor can pass judgment on a High Noble. You should know that, Lady Mia. Mouse, stop calling me Lady, Mia snapped, her anger spilling over onto him. Mouse shrank back from the harshness in her tone. Leif and Hemlock looked at her in shock as Cat let out a soft growl, clearly directed at Mia. I'm sorry, Mia, I didn't mean to upset you. No, Mouse, you shouldn't apologize, Mia said, her eyes softening as a look of shame settled on her face. It's I who owe you an apology. Please forgive me, my friend. It's fine. I know your anger wasn't meant for me. Mouse smiled lightly, though a bit of hurt remained in his eyes. Mia smiled at Mouse, then turned to face Leif and Hemlock. I owe you and Mr. Hemlock an apology as well. Please forgive me for my outburst. There's nothing to forgive, Miss Mia, Hemlock said as he began helping Leif remove his protective plate. I too am angry with Lady Syncred's actions, but as Mouse said, there's nothing that can be done. Leif let out a grunt of pain, followed by a feeling of relief as Hemlock loosened the straps of the plate. It's okay. You were just concerned for our well-being. Mia blushed and quickly turned around as Leif removed his tunic. Thank you for your forgiveness. I need to go now. I have a lecture soon. She hurried off and out of the forge. Is she all right, Mouse? Leif asked as he watched Mia step off the sandy floor. The shock of her anger still fresh in his mind. He had never seen her that upset. After the events of the first day, she had been the strongest of them, helping with their grief until the Magus cast the Dream Day enchantment. I think so, Mouse said as Cat came to sit next to him. But I think Lady Mia is also upset about Magus Strider scolding her for wandering the halls at night. Oh, why was she wandering the halls? Leif and Hemlock both looked to Mouse. I don't know, Lord Leif. She said she couldn't sleep, so she went for a stroll, Mouse said in a squeaky tone. Well, Cat and I should be on our way. We should be on our way as well, Leif said as he glanced at Hemlock, who was still looking over the broken plate. I need something to eat, and we've got our own lectures to get to. Something to eat would be nice, my friend, Hemlock said, placing the plate on the bench and helping Leif to his feet. Perhaps along the way you could tell me how you plan to choose between the two lovely flowers. Leif rolled his eyes as they walked across the arena. What flowers?